for another day in Bronnie's World, and I have a guest with me, one of my dear friends, who I've been trying to get for at least 12 months. But we've had to do a different day because of that. And also, for those of you who follow me, you will know that I've decided to dedicate today's call to my baby sister, who was just 61 in February, who passed away a week ago, just about a week ago, on the 9th of May, from a brain hemorrhage. Now, my beautiful little sister supported me. She was a longevity distributor like myself. She was also a holistic health coach, but she was a naughty girl, as little sisters are, and did fractionated nutrition. And so I think she would like me to actually share that with you, that whilst she was doing it all really good, she was strict there for a while, and my sister had always been a sickly child. But she actually, when she first did the course, was strict on what she ate, was strict on what she took. And both her husband and I saw a huge change in her. So it was a little disappointing when she just said to me, "Oh, Bronnie, but I like to eat certain foods." But anyway, she's at home with the Lord now. That's where she's always wanted to be. It's us who are left behind, who are going to miss her and her children. But we've got a job to do. We've got a job to do. We don't want to see anyone else dying prematurely for things that they could change to help. So we're doing this. Dr. Joanne Conaway, I said, we've got lives to save. So as much as I'm still hurting, you guys are all important to me and to Dr. Joanne Conaway. So we're here to help you save yourself. All right, so with that, no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Conaway. Take it away, my dear friend.
Well, I appreciate that so much, and I am so excited to be with you folks this evening. You know, this is a thrill for me. It has been a while trying to pull this all together, but it's definitely a thrill for me to be able to be here and share with you. And my condolences. You touch my heart when you say the things that you say, and I know your sister was very important to you. So I'm so sorry for your loss. It's a tough thing. It's very hard to lose a sibling. So. Okay, so tonight I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about my favorite topic to talk about, okay? But I'm going to talk about the gut, and I'm going to talk about it from a little bit different perspective, because I think that it's important that people understand that the gut really is important. It's fascinating because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today, and she reminded me of an incident that occurred in my life just a few weeks ago. It's my hairdresser, the girl that I go to about once a month, once every 6 weeks, to have my hair trimmed. And for 11 years, she has had all kinds of complaints, told me all kinds of things that are going on with her. And periodically, not always, because sometimes I felt like I was talking to the wall, but periodically I would say, well, I have a protocol to help with that. I have a protocol to help straighten out the gut. And what we know is the gut impacts the rest of your health, no matter what aspect of your health we're talking about. And she'd kind of listen and just kind of go about her business. So I go in there a couple of months ago, and she said, "I have to tell you something." She said, "But I'm going to back up when I tell you, because I don't want you to smack me and knock me across the room." And what she shared with me was that she had done a little bit of research and had started to understand a little bit more about the gut, and had cleaned up her diet a little bit and started taking probiotics, and was seeing amazing changes just taking a few probiotics. She has since, of course, started to do the program and the protocol that I recommend, and she's seeing even more changes. But her comment was, "I can't believe it. This is what Dr. Joanne has been talking to me about for 11 years. Is it really that simple?" So,
yes,
in many cases, I have to say yes. It really is that simple. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is people who start taking the products and they don't feel like they're getting the benefit. They don't feel like the products are working for them as well as they've worked for someone else. And interestingly enough, what people don't realize is if you're not absorbing these products, they're not going to work for you like they will work for someone who has a healthy gut and who is absorbing properly. So let's just start with that tonight and talk a little bit about the importance of the gut, because it really is that simple. And I think more people need to realize it. So let's start with saying you are the only you. And what do I mean by that? Well, your bacteria, your microbiota is specific to you. No one else in the world has a microbiota that is the same as yours. And that microbiota is responsible for command and control from the womb to the grave and beyond. So when we talk about the human microbiome, just a few things that are important to know: 10 times more bacteria than the cells in our body. Now that's an enormous number of different types of bacteria, okay? The majority of it is in the gastrointestinal system, but also we find we have a microbiota of the skin, the mouth, the genitourinary system, the eyes. It's really fascinating when we start to talk about these things. And in fact, over the course of the last several years, I have started to focus on a healthy mouth and the importance of bacterial balance in the mouth. As with most things, when we start talking about bacteria, when bacteria were first looked at from the standpoint of the ability to cause disease, it was felt like all bacteria were bad. We had to get rid of all bacteria. And so that was the mantra for many years. You didn't want bacteria. If you had bacteria in your mouth, it wasn't good. It wasn't healthy. And what we know is, just like in the gut, you need to have good, healthy bacteria in the mouth, as well as those less desirable bacteria. But you must have an abundance of the healthy bacteria. And just like in the gut, you're going to have good bacteria, you're going to have bad bacteria. You want an overabundance of those things that are healthy. You want to make sure that those things that are not healthy are actually gotten rid of and dealt with. So there are various bacterial species. When we talk about the gut, we know that there are some 500 to 1,000 different species of bacteria in the gut. In the mouth alone, there's over 700 identified bacterial species. And interestingly enough, of those 700, only about 11 have been identified as being bad. So various bacterial species throughout the body, but your microbiome, once again, makes you unique. I don't care if you're an identical twin, you're not going to have a microbiome that is exactly like your twin. So the other thing that research is showing us now is that the microbiome and the health of the microbiome is actually established before birth. And we also now know that microbial communities exist after death. So when we talk about the human microbiome, once again, I think it's important to understand that there has to be a balance. You have to have an abundance of the good, not so much of the bad. And until or unless you have that good, healthy bacterial balance, no matter which microbiome we're talking about, until you have that good balance, you're not going to be healthy. So when we talk about gut and the gut microbes, we talk about the gut has an impact on every other system in the body. And this is just a slide to give you that example, okay? When we talk about the gut, certainly it has, the gut microbiome certainly have an impact on what goes on in the gut, but they also have a dramatic impact on what goes on in the brain, what goes on in the mouth, what goes on in our tissue lipid composition, the fat in our tissue and the adipose tissue in our body, our energy metabolism, our fat and liver metabolism, our cardiovascular disease health. Every other system in the body is impacted by what's going on in the gut. So the gastrointestinal system, or the gut as we call it, is the most metabolically active organ in the human body. It's a long tube of muscle. Peristaltic waves throughout the gut actually help our bodies to digest and to move the food down the GI tract. We also have a migrating motor complex. The migrating motor complex, interestingly enough, something we've not always known about, but the migrating motor complex in the gut is responsible for cleaning out the trash. Interestingly enough, the migrating motor complex starts at the end of the stomach, so the beginning of the small intestine, and it actually works its way through the small intestine to literally clean out leftover bacteria, leftover fiber, all of those things that need to be cleaned out so that the small intestine can do its job properly. Now, a couple of key things to know about the migrating motor complex is that it does not even kick in until about 2 to 3 hours after you have eaten a meal, because in that first 2 to 3 hours, your body is actively digesting that meal. Once that meal is digested, then the migrating motor complex kicks in, and literally there's a peristaltic wave that once again will clean out the trash. The important thing to know and understand, however, is if you eat at any point in time during that activity, you will stop that activity and your gut will go back to digesting. So when we talk about the migrating motor complex, what we say is you really need to have 4 to 5 hours between meals. 4 to 5 hours between the consumption of solid food. A lot of people don't do that. Some people say, oh, well, I'll let my migrating motor complex do its job at night when I'm sleeping. That's not adequate. That's not enough. So just remember that when we start talking about the migrating motor complex and cleaning out the trash, if we don't have an active migrating motor complex because we graze all day long or we're always munching on something, then we're going to set ourselves up for excessive trash in the small intestine and the body not being able to get rid of it. Now, when we talk about it from that perspective, what we understand is many of the people who are diagnosed with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, for example, or SIBO as we call it, are suffering because they graze all day long. They're eating all the time. The body never has a chance to experience this migrating motor complex. So it is also a long tube of nerves. The enteric nervous system, all the nerves in our gut are referred to as the second brain. And there's significant communication that goes on between the brain and the gastrointestinal tract. This bi-directional gut-brain axis. We're going to talk more about it, but suffice it to say that biochemical signaling occurs, and the signaling is occurring and messages are being passed back and forth from the gut to the central nervous system, from the central nervous system to the gut. So the gut microbiota, the microbe population living within our digestive system. Interestingly enough, we have good bacteria, we have bad bacteria, we have parasites, we have fungus and yeast, we have all kinds of things that are considered microbes living in our guts. And it's a matter of whether or not we have a good balance. So the gut is dominated by a diverse array of bacteria. The healthy bacteria in the gut control hundreds of thousands of disease-causing or pathogenic bacteria, and we know that uncontrolled unhealthy bacteria can ultimately become pathogenic. Now, when we talk about unhealthy bacteria and healthy bacteria live together side by side in the gut. However, if we don't have enough of the good and we have an overgrowth of the bad, that overgrowth of the bad, which was living quite nicely with the good, now becomes pathogenic, meaning it can become disease-causing and can, in fact, cause issues throughout the rest of the body. So why is gut health important? Well, we live in symbiosis with our bacteria. It's established at birth. We're now recognizing that maybe even before birth, but it allows us to gain nutrients and energy from the foods that we cannot break down on our own. Our bacteria are necessary to help to break down our foods. We have 10 to 100 trillion microbes, so more genes than the human genome. Gut neural system, known as the second brain, 200 to 600 million neurons in the gut. Remember, those neurons are that part of the central nervous system, or that part of the nervous system that the messages get funneled across. The gut-brain axis, the gut creates necessary neurotransmitters, and these affect mood. They send signals back and forth. It's interesting, I can remember when I was writing my book, I learned that serotonin, which is that feel-good hormone we've always taught and always believed that it was produced in the brain, 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. About 50% of the body's dopamine is produced in the gut, and likewise, GABA is produced in the gut. So when you look at these very critically important neurotransmitters, when we think about mood and good, healthy brain function, they're created in the gut. And so recognizing that and understanding that has helped to drive more and more research into that gut-brain axis. These good, healthy gut bacteria protect from pathogens that get ingested, meaning if you eat something and perhaps it was not healthy, it had bacteria, if you've got a lot of good, healthy bacteria, then your body can overcome that. If you, for example, go out with a group of people, you all eat the same thing, some of you get horrific gut symptoms as a result, and others don't, it's because those others have a healthier gut. Their healthy bacteria were actually beneficial in as much as they helped to protect you from those pathogens. Good healthy bacteria provides energy. It breaks foods down into short chain fatty acids necessary to ensure that we've got good energy. Regulates digestion. We know that if we don't have a lot of good bacteria, we're going to have an unhealthy digestion. We're going to have bloating and cramps and all kinds of problems. And some vitamins are exclusively made by the gut microbiota. Many of the vitamins, especially the B vitamins, are actually synthesized in the large intestine because of good, healthy gut bacteria. So some factors that affect the gut microbiome, we're going to talk about several of these, but genes, genetics, certainly, diet, very important to know and understand that, sleep, gender, age, hormones, hygiene, your occupation, stress levels, exercise. As I said, we're going to talk about these things, but these are factors that affect the gut microbiome. So why should you be concerned about having bad gut health? Well, you need to be concerned from several different perspectives, but you need to start being concerned, therefore paying attention to things like your diet. For example, a high sugar, high fat diet will promote gut dysbiosis. Good bacteria will die off, but the bad bacteria will thrive, especially in a high sugar environment. Too much stress in your life, people can develop what we refer to as leaky gut syndrome. And so when you develop a leaky gut, what happens is those things that are supposed to stay within your gut begin to leak out into the circulation. And when that happens, that's when problems happen. When that happens, that's when disease starts happening. If you have bloating or gas, you need to consider that a certain amount of bloating and a certain amount of gas is acceptable. But when you have chronic issues with bloating and gas, you need to be concerned, and you need to recognize that that probably means that you don't have good bacterial balance. If you have depression or mood issues, you have a lack of neurotransmission, less serotonin being made in the gut than normal. And as I said, dopamine, GABA, the other neurotransmitters that keep us on an even keel, if you will. A lack of energy, people who have a lack of energy oftentimes don't relate it to food being improperly broken down. They can't derive energy from poorly digested foods. They don't realize that this is what's going on and what's happening. If you're older, your microbiome isn't the same. You have reduced microbiota diversity, and that's one of the reasons why taking products to help to regenerate and rebuild all those good colonies of bacteria is so important. There's an elevated risk of cancer if you don't have a good, healthy gut, and significant fluctuation of hormones, such as estrogen, for example. Excuse me, and this fluctuation of hormones can actually trigger gut changes and possibly tumor growth. So these are the things you need to think about, and these are the reasons why you need to be concerned. So some symptoms that are associated with leaky gut: fatigue, often chronic, sometimes most noticeable after eating. When you eat a meal, you're supposed to get the fuel that you need to keep you going. Sometimes people eat a meal and they want to go sit down and take a nap. And what's happening there is you don't have enough of the good bacteria. Your food is being digested by the bad bacteria and yielding, instead of those molecules that are healthy to keep you revved and moving forward, they make you sluggish. They're actually poisons leaving the gut now. When we talk about the breakdown of food by our bacteria, good bacteria breaks down our foods, and what leaves the gut is good, healthy molecules. Bad bacteria will process our food, but what leaves the gut then is actually poisons and toxins. Additional symptoms: poor digestion, constipation, diarrhea, gas, bloating, cramps, heartburn. I can't tell you the number of people I work with that think that these symptoms are normal. These are not normal symptoms. You should not go through a day suffering with either constipation or diarrhea. You should not go through the day suffering with cramps or bloating or heartburn. Vaginal infections, impotence, prostatitis, urinary infections, rectal itch, all of these things, interestingly enough, can be symptoms that are associated with a leaky gut. Skin irritations such as eczema, hives, psoriasis, athlete's foot, jock itch. Really? Athlete's foot and jock itch? And this is one of the things that people will ask me all the time: how can my jock itch be related to my gut? Well, interestingly enough, it's very closely related, because jock itch is usually a yeast problem. Athlete's foot is a yeast problem. Both of those yeast problems are happening because you have an overgrowth of yeast in the gut, and that happens because you don't have enough of the good bacteria to keep that yeast at bay. It's there, it's part of us. Candida is a part of every one of us. It's not problematic until or unless you don't have enough good, healthy bacteria, and then it becomes problematic. It is allowed to overgrow and become systemic. If you have frequent colds and flu, postnasal drip, bronchitis, asthma, sore throats, likely you have a leaky gut. Allergies, both to foods and airborne chemicals. Oftentimes people are sensitive. They have food sensitivities, as we call it, and they develop allergies. Oftentimes they develop allergies later in life. People will say, oh, I never had a problem with chocolate. Now when I eat chocolate, I break out in hives. Or I never had a problem with strawberries. Now when I eat strawberries, I break out in hives. You're developing a food sensitivity. You're developing an allergy. Why? Because you don't have enough good bacteria. If you have sugar cravings, mood swings, headaches, especially migraine headaches, poor concentration, dizziness, depression, and anxiety, all of these things, again, can be associated with a leaky gut. And in early childhood, kiddos that have hyperactivity, excessive anger, cradle cap, rashes, thrush, chronic infections, all of these things can be related to a leaky gut. And hormonal imbalances, erectile dysfunction. Now, that's when it really gets wild, okay? People say, how can my erectile dysfunction be linked to my gut? Well, it's linked to your gut because if you don't have that good, healthy balance, your body suffers. Every aspect of your health suffers. So, unhealthy gut bacteria, inadequately controlled, unhealthy bacteria are going to process your foods differently. They, as I said, will convert your foods to poisons. Poisons then pass through the gut lining and travel throughout the body, causing disease. They can take up residence in the joints and cause an arthritis. They can take up residence in the brain and cause mental disorders. These poisons can impact the skin and cause an eczema, rosacea, or those other skin issues. Or they can take up residence in the thyroid and cause what we call Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is referred to as an autoimmune condition, and it's a condition in which the body is reacting to itself, and that is because of things that have passed through the gut wall into the circulation that should not have done so. So, systemic impact of an unhealthy gut. And I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but systemic impact of an unhealthy gut. So the gastrointestinal system, obviously, we talked about it. The gas, the bloating, the acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea, cramps, malabsorption, all of those are a systemic impact related to the gastrointestinal system. Musculoskeletal system, poisons again can pass through the gut lining and travel throughout the body, and people can develop things like arthritis, chronic muscle pain, lots of joint discomfort, and they don't understand why. With respect to the cardiovascular system, an unhealthy gut can lead to high blood pressure, atherosclerosis, heart attack, stroke. Endocrine system, a person can develop diabetes, thyroid disease, adrenal fatigue, high cortisol. When we talk about the gut and gut bacteria, we have to recognize that there's a dramatic impact between a healthy gut and your endocrine system and your hormonal function. The reproductive system, people can suffer with infertility, erectile dysfunction, miscarriage. Neurological system, people can develop Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, autism, attention deficit disorder. All of these things, again, can be the impact of an unhealthy gut. And the integumentary system, your skin, for example, chronic infections, fungal infections, cancers, all of those things. Now, I want to take a few minutes and talk specifically about the gut-brain axis. This is where there's a lot of research being done, and from my perspective, it's very exciting research. When we talk about the gut-brain axis, it is via the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It's the longest, most complicated cranial nerve in the body. Starts at the base of the brain and comes down and innervates everything in the thoracic cavity and everything in the abdominal cavity. It actually innervates the heart, the lung, the liver, the spleen, the small intestine, large intestine, stomach, kidneys, everything, okay? So it interfaces with and controls all of these organs throughout the body. When we talk about nerves, and the vagus nerve in particular, we know that if it's not functioning well, for example, people can have heart issues, people can develop atrial fibrillation, for example, if they have compression of the vagus nerve. Oftentimes, as people get older, they will develop an atrial fibrillation, and it has to do with an impingement of the vagus nerve. But most of those people that have atrial fibrillation, if you sit down and have a discussion with them and talk to them about what else goes on in their world, they'll also tell you that they have gut issues. So it all has to do with the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve allows for what we refer to as bidirectional communication. This bidirectional communication between the brain and the peripheral organs. So when you look at this slide, the sensory information is that information that travels from the organ to the brain, and that's depicted by the red arrows. The brain also controls motor function of the organs, and that's depicted by the black arrows. So, picking on the tongue for a minute, if you, for example, pick up a cup of coffee and it's too hot, you sip on the hot coffee and it's like, woof, a message goes immediately to the brain and it says, that was pretty dumb, let's not do that again, okay? But by the same token, the brain is allowing me to speak. The brain is allowing me to talk with you. And it's because of that control of the motor function of my tongue that the brain is responsible for. So the vagus nerve, again, bidirectional communication between the brain and the peripheral organs. And as you can see, the peripheral organs encompass all areas of the body.
Yeah.
So there's a primal connection between the gut and the brain. I'm sure you've all heard the term gut feeling or gut instinct or gut check. And it's because of this gut-brain axis, this extensive network of neurons referred to as the second brain. It's also a highway of chemicals and hormones That highway, again, is the vagus nerve. If you have decreased brain function and digestive issues, without a doubt, you have an impaired gut-brain axis. So what are some of the symptoms of an impaired gut-brain axis? Well, you have neurological issues, referred to as GAPS, gut and psychology syndrome. And in adults, you may see things like depression, and depression is often missed as a diagnosis. A person will go to the doctor and say, "Doc, I'm depressed." And the doctor will say, "Nah, you're really not depressed. You know, you've got a kid going off to college, your wife just wrecked the car, your other kids involved in drugs, all kinds of issues in your life. You're probably not depressed. Let's just go ahead and give you something to help you sleep a little bit better, and life will be better." No, the person was really depressed, and perhaps really depressed because they had an unhealthy gut. We know that many people who are depressed, many people who have all kinds of issues and problems with post-traumatic stress disorder, those issues and problems can sometimes be overcome very quickly with a healthier gut. If you have brain fog, lack of focus, inability to concentrate, you sit down to read a book and you read the same paragraph 3 times, and for the life of you, you can't tell me what you were just reading about. Manic depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, all of these can be symptoms of a gut-brain axis issue. We used to think that schizophrenia was strictly a brain issue. Now we know that it can be linked to an unhealthy gut. Substance abuse, erectile dysfunction, impotence, sexual dysfunction, all of these things can be as a result of an impaired gut-brain axis. So when we talk about gut-brain axis issues in children, it becomes very apparent, in my opinion, when kids are out of control, that they don't have a healthy gut. And again, gut and psychology syndrome, or GAPS. In children, autism. Autism is often a late diagnosis, and that's because in the conventional medicine world, the basic understanding is no 2 children are the same. So mom and dad bring Johnny into the doctor at 6 months and say, "He just does not seem to be progressing like Susie." And the doctor says, "No, 2 children are the same. Let's watch him for another 6 months." So now Johnny goes in at 12 months. Mom and dad say he's not progressing anything like Susie. And doctor says, "Well, no 2 children are the same. Let's watch him for another 6 months." And so now the child goes in at 18 months, clearly has something going on. And all the while, we could have been working on this, but it's been recognized that no 2 children are the same. And so oftentimes autism is a late diagnosis. I have a situation, or had a situation several years ago, and it's one that really struck home for me because this person, or these people, had actually adopted a child, and adopted the child when it was an infant, adopted the child from Russia. So went through all of what they had to go through to adopt this child from Russia. When this woman reached out to me, the child was 3 years old, had never made eye contact, had never uttered a word except to cry when she was hungry or hurting for some reason. Never, ever any interaction. So imagine wanting a child so desperately that you adopt a child from Russia and have this child come home, and now at the age of 3, this child is non-communicative and is just this, unfortunately, just this entity living in the home with them. So I told this person what I felt like she needed to do, and that was, change the diet, clean up the diet, get the gluten out of the diet, all the things that we know with respect to diet. And I put the child on a program. The woman called me back within a week. In 5 days, she called me back. And after 3 years of nothing, this child was making eye contact and was uttering sounds, not making words and certainly not talking, but uttering sounds that weren't just the guttural sounds that are associated with hurting or being hungry. That was after 5 days. That was after 5 days of repairing the gut. Dyspraxia, children with dyspraxia are totally out of sync with their environment. Kids are dyslexic. Dyslexic children, words are very tough for dyslexic children. A child can have attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This is often diagnosed due to difficulty in language expression. These kiddos struggle, and so oftentimes they're struggling because they don't have a healthy gut. And when you think about it in terms of what the majority of kiddos eat today, is it any wonder? Also, it's interesting that there is a link to the post-mortem microbiome. It is used to determine the accurate time of death. It's also used to determine the accurate cause of death and to determine existing health conditions at the time of death. So when we're looking at bacteria after death, it's fascinating because there are specific forensic facts that can be determined looking at the bacterial makeup of a person after they have already died. So that's it for what I want to talk about tonight. I am going to put this slide up because, as many of you know, I do a call every Tuesday night. I have done a call every Tuesday night for longevity for, I'm going to say, probably 20 or so years now, at least 20 years. And during my portion of the call, I talk about a situation or a condition. Like, for example, right now I'm working on the endocrine system, and I started last week with basic endocrine system discussion. And most recently, last night, we talked about the neuroendocrine system. And now that particular discussion is going to go on for the next several weeks because the endocrine system is very complicated. But I invite you to join me. The information about the Zoom is always put up on my Facebook page. It's always put up on the corporate page, and it's always put up on various other different pages. But this is the information that you need. And I know that someone will have a snapshot of this slide to be able to use. But for now, I want to go ahead and take some questions.
Yeah, well, that was excellent. So that just getting back to your call, your weekly call is our Wednesday here for us down under. So
right, it's going to be 8.
So that would be about 8. You're 8.
My 8 p.m. on Tuesday.
And so it'll be about 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. When I'm not flying out the door for something else, I try and get on. If I don't get on, this usually means my husband's got me out.
Well, they are recorded, and that's the nice thing. They are recorded, and they're usually put up on Wednesday after the call. So my Wednesday, they're usually put up on the Elevate Your Health Facebook page. Yeah. So they're put up as the Wellness Wednesday call. And that's because a little bit of editing gets done and then the call gets put up. But I do 30 minutes. And then after my 30 minutes, Brenda Wright does 30 minutes talking about the essential oils. And then after that's done, I oftentimes will answer questions that have been sent to me ahead of time and spend the next 20, 30 minutes answering questions for people. So
I actually think way back 3 years ago now that my sister actually sent you a question that you answered on one of those. So it's my sister that just passed away. But that it's probably good. And I do love getting on your calls when I can. So this is really awesome. And that was such a wealth of information you shared this morning. And I could feel different things clicking for me. But whilst we
I do have a protocol, and I'm sure you have a copy of the protocol that you can share with your folks. But I have a protocol to help to repair the gut in adults and a protocol to help to repair the gut in children. So
I think I'm pretty sure I got to actually print out a copy of those.
Right.
I have to just check because anyway, so I have so many files. I got to find them. Now I do know that Gracie's working in the background, so she's put a question in the comments. Can you unmute, Gracie?
I can. Thank you. Thanks, Bronnie.
Oh, now where did you disappear?
Hello. Hi, Dr. Joanne Conaway.
Hi
We
there.
love your gut protocol. I support many of my customers through it, and I've gone through it myself. It is absolutely amazing. It does make such a big difference. And just following the good, bad food list is just so important. But a lot of people still struggle with the oils and the breads. So we go gluten-free. My question is, and we did discuss this last night, we had a Ask a Naturopath call with Kevin, and we talked about the fermentation of bread. But I still get a lot of questions on what about gluten-free bread? What about a nice custom homemade gluten-free bread without the yeast, without the oils, with minimal ingredients? Does that still interact with the bacteria, and does it feed on? That's my question.
Okay, no, and that's a really good question. And yes, there's still some interaction with bacteria, but you're not going to have the negative impact that you have with gluten. Okay. And so that's a really important thing to understand. And I have some people who say, there's no way, I can't go gluten-free, I can't stop eating bread, I can't stand gluten-free bread, I won't do it. If you have people that are dead set against it, then I recommend that if they're going to continue to eat bread, they at least get themselves some sourdough starter and create sourdough bread. The actual fermentation process for sourdough bread lessens the amount of gluten, okay? The other thing too that is so important, and especially in our country, is the recognition of not only the impact of gluten, but the impact of glyphosate on the wheat. Okay, what we now know is that glyphosate is used to actually desiccate the wheat and bring it to fruition more uniformly. And this has allowed farmers to be able to produce more than one crop or more than 2 crops of wheat in a year. And by using the glyphosate, it kills off the wheat, brings it to fruition again more uniformly, so they can go through, cut all the wheat, not be concerned about the mold with some fresher wheat, lesser fresh wheat, all of those things. So now, not only are we worried about the gluten, but we also have to be worried about the glyphosate. And I just read an article today that our FDA has approved yet another chemical that can be sprayed on all of the wheat and rye and barley. So, you can't win. You have to be so careful, but by the same token, you have to eat. Okay, so it's a challenge. But when people say to me that's it, I can't go gluten free, I just say then okay, at the very least, do sourdough bread. At the very least.
Okay, thank you so much. I know someone in our area who makes a gluten-free sourdough bread. So I think we're on a good thing with that. So thank you so much, Taff.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
That was a good question, Gracie.
Thank you.
Grant, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, g'day, Doctor. That's a fascinating little lecture, Doctor. I have to be following you forever now. I do have a question. You talked about arthritis and gut health. Can osteoarthritis be caused from a gut problem?
In part, yes. Okay. Now, usually when we talk about arthritis and gut health, we're talking about the autoimmune rheumatoid arthritis situation. But when we're talking about arthritis, as a general rule, we have to recognize that, once again, if foods are not broken down and absorbed properly because you don't have a good, healthy balance of gut bacteria, then you're not going to get from your foods the things that are necessary to ensure that your body's healthy no matter what. But the other really important thing to know is you're also not going to get the benefit of the supplements that you're taking if you don't have good gut bacterial balance. And this is one of the reasons why I always stress with people, make sure you've got your gut right so that you're absorbing the calcium and you're absorbing the selenium and you're absorbing the minerals and the other things that are in the products. And it's because, in my experience, many people have had issues and problems with osteoarthritis that they can't seem to get a handle on. They do the gut protocol, and all of a sudden they start to see a tremendous benefit. that tremendous benefit is happening as a result of those products, the glucogel, the osteo, those products being better absorbed by the body.
Because my regular supplement program's not that far from your gut protocol. I've had a look at it, but it doesn't seem to have much effect on my osteoarthritis in my right hip.
Interesting, because what I have found, again, in my experience working with people, is if they're not seeing that benefit, if they will do the 20-day protocol, oftentimes it's all it takes to correct the issue. Now, having said that, the other thing that we have to think about is there's always the potential for parasites. When we talk about parasites, I also have a parasite protocol, but when we talk about parasites, parasites can impact your body in much the same way as an imbalance of gut bacteria. All of the same kinds of symptoms that you would see in someone who has an unhealthy gut because of an imbalance of bacteria can have an unhealthy gut because of an overgrowth of parasites. So normally what I recommend is people start with a good food, bad food list and my 20-day protocol. If they don't start with significant benefit, then maybe we need to consider that it could be parasites. Used to be thought that if you had parasites because you'd been to a third world country or some other reason.
I have been to third world countries. I've been to a lot of them.
But one of the things that we now know, and research is showing us this, is even if you haven't been to a third world country, some researchers say 85% of us have parasites, period, across the board. Some researchers say if you're walking, talking, and taking nutrition, you have parasites, meaning we all do. So there's a parasite protocol that we use, and I personally do the parasite protocol a couple of times a year. And the reason I do is because I still eat ceviche and steak tartare and those things that could likely give me parasites. So I always say better out than in. And so I usually do a good parasite protocol, usually a couple times a year.
Because I've got severe osteoarthritis in one hip, but the rest of it is not too bad. It's just one hip. It's just like, wow, like sheesh.
Yeah.
So it could be parasites.
One of those more difficult things to explain. Why just in one hip and not the other?
Well, the other's got mild osteoarthritis, but my arms, I've got better movement in my arms than most people. Like, so it's just amazing. The rest of me feels all right, but my hip is terrible. Yeah.
Oh.
And Gracie just added there, talking on parasites, parasites cause cancer?
That's a controversial subject, but I would say that I am one of the people who believes that cancer could very well be because of parasites. There's a lot of research out there, and a lot of research is showing us exactly that. A lot of research is showing us that cancer is parasites.
It certainly would lower the immune system of the body. The parasites.
Absolutely.
So, and that opens you up to all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cancer being one of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah, I had cancer as well. So, I'm in that boat.
All right. Well, can we move along to Diane's question now? Thank you, Grant, for that.
Thanks, Grant. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Joanne. I took you to many years ago at Castle Hill. You were visiting. My husband and I took you and your husband to Darling Harbour. Do you remember?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That has been a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, my little guy was young, and now he just turned 31 yesterday and has 2 children of his own. So that's been a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I've got a lady at the moment that's got retroverted uterus and prolapse uterus and bladder, but it's not bad enough to operate on. Can we put her on something to maybe improve that?
What I normally do is recommend the good food, bad food list, the gut protocol. And again, the gut protocol, because I want to make sure that the supplements she's taking are being absorbed.
Yes.
But then what I always recommend is the 90 essential nutrients and ample calcium, magnesium. Oftentimes when we talk about a prolapse, it's because those structures are not doing what they're supposed to. The other thing that will help with that is the collagen. Collagen, and I would say take double the dose of collagen. Again, those are the kinds of things that are going to help because it is a structural thing. And if you have adequate amounts of calcium and adequate amounts of collagen, along with the other nutrients, oftentimes we see an amazing benefit.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Now I'm trying to get Nina to unmute. Put her. Where is she gone? Oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah. So I have been diagnosed in January with rectal cancer. I also have PBC, cholestatic liver disease, which they say I've had, you know, since I was like 23 or something like that. I am now, I've got the 90 essential nutrients and everything, the supplements and things like that. But yeah, I was just wondering like what foods to eat, what foods to avoid. Was seeing a naturopath. She told me what I can't, like what foods to eat, but there was basically nothing.
Right.
And I need like nutrients and stuff. So watching Kevin yesterday, I asked him about, you know, the brown rice and things like that. But practically 99% of my food is organic. I sort of sometimes have trouble getting, you know, organic strawberries and I've got the blueberries, but yeah, seem to, so that would probably be the only thing that I don't have that's organic would be, say, strawberries, blackberries, yeah, so just those raspberries as well. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, yeah, because I'm so hungry, I'm just losing weight. I'm, you know, each week I'm just losing weight. So.
Okay, so what I always tell people is focus on the good food, bad food list. Don't struggle on so much what food can I and what food can I eat. Just use a good food, bad food list. Also, do the gut protocol. Make sure that your gut is healthy, okay?
Yes.
Oftentimes, because of what we're learning about parasites and cancer, I also encourage people to do what we refer to as the full moon cleanse, which is the parasite cleanse. But anytime someone comes to me with a cancer diagnosis, it's good food, bad food, healthy gut, 90 nutrients, extra selenium, at least 2 of those, okay? Another product that we have, and I'm not sure if you folks can get it, but another product that we have is the Oxybody. The Oxybody is food grade hydrogen peroxide. Cancer cells cannot thrive in an oxygen-rich environment. The very important thing to remember about that particular product is it must be on an empty stomach.
Okay.
That means at least an hour before you eat any food and 2 hours after you eat any food. And the reason for that is when we eat any kind of food, there is a process whereby we yield free radicals in the gut. You add oxygen to that, and you're going to yield far more free radicals. So make sure it's always on an empty stomach. And I always recommend 3 ounces a day. And I say that because it needs to be on an empty stomach, usually 1.5 ounces twice a day. The other product that is amazing is the RVB 500, RYL 500, RYL 500, the beta glucan product, the RYL 500 to body weight. The other product that I always recommend is the elixir, and I'm not sure if you can get that, but the elixir in the Nature's Pearl line, and that should be 1 ounce once a day. The Z Radical, can you get the Z Radical? Okay, Fucoid Z. All right.
Okay, I have that.
Okay, I would make sure that I'm taking double the dose of Fucoid Z every day.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And then the Hope in the Stay Natural line. And again, when you're going after cancer and trying to kill off cancer cells, you have a lot of toxins coming into the blood. The Hope is a blood purifier or a blood cleanser. And so that Hope product in the Stay Natural line actually helps to clean the blood. And I wouldn't hesitate to do 2 of those twice a day.
Wow,
Yeah.
that
But if it's a cancer diagnosis, I go after it with everything.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just have to get that 20, what was it, the 20 food list?
20-day protocol.
Yeah, yes, definitely get.
Gracie would have that.
I've just sent it through, lovely, and we'll catch up later about the gut and the
Yes.
parasite.
Thank
Lovely.
you. Thank
I
you.
know
You're very
Gracie has
welcome.
those. Well, so we are over time. Does anyone else have any other questions? And that was awesome, Nina, by the way.
Yes, thank you. Thank
All
you
the best
so
with
much.
that.
Dr.
Keep us
You're very
posted.
welcome.
I would just like to add something. Thank you so much for your time and valuable information, Dr. Joanne Conaway. You know, we all say the same message, and today you put it in such a beautiful way. I love your presentation. So that begs to ask the question. It's been a long time since we saw your book, America's Biggest Problems.
Why is America so sick? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
So the presentation you did today, explaining that gut and the understanding that the nerve interaction. Any chance that you could do a presentation like that, record it, and then offer it as a CD as part of your new collection?
I actually have a CD.
I know you got the digestion one and the hormones one, but they go back a
Yeah,
fair
but I
while.
also have one that's the gut brain connection.
Okay. I haven't seen that one on your
But
website.
again, you know, anytime I talk with you folks, the unfortunate thing is to send you the CD, it costs more to send it to you than to actually record the CD. So let me see. Let me see if I can't get a presentation together and record it and make it available so that people could just listen to the presentation without having to get the CD.
That'll be awesome. And a new book? Is there a new book in the system at all?
I'm working on it, but you know what? I'm really busy. I have 2 of the most beautiful grandchildren, and I take care of them every Monday and Tuesday. And so my Monday starts at 5 a.m. I take care of them all day long. Then I teach a webcast on Monday night. And then I'm up at 5 on Tuesday. I take care of them all day long. And then I do my conference call on Tuesday night. So Monday and Tuesday are like just, I can't do anything else. And then Wednesday is when I start to catch up. And for those of you who know me, Thursday has been my date day with my husband for almost 30 years. And so Thursday's out. So I just stay very busy. I do need to get more focused. I do need to move along and get that second book published. But I just
we're always looking at ways for you because with longevity, the best thing about longevity is a community-based business, and it's a win-win-win for everybody. So, you know, you're giving your time and valuable information here, and other than satisfaction, the same as me helping Dr. Wallach, you get nothing for it. So, promoting your book, promoting your CDs is our way of saying thanks. So, you know, I have a lot of books in my collection here. I haven't had any of yours for some time. I haven't had a call. It's hence why I'm looking for new stuff. So, you know, let's talk further and see how we can, you know, grow your presence down here as well.
sounds good. Sounds good. And maybe one of these days I'll come back again.
Well,
Please do. Yes, we're always looking at bringing people like yourself down here, you know, just to talk the 90 for life message, taking away all the other stuff that longevity has to offer and just focusing purely on, you know, our message and the 90 for life, the Dr. Wallach way, and our way as it's become.
Right. You know, one of my favorite lectures to do is the lecture that I do on why minerals. and why our minerals are so different from anyone else's minerals. And it's with that understanding. I know when I started with longevity, I started with only the minerals. That's all I took. And I started to see amazing changes just with the minerals.
Yep. I was the same. When my family introduced me to it. It took 3 months before I believed there was anything in this magic water. And it wasn't until I stopped taking it, I realized, oh, there was something there. Started
How about
taking again, then it all started working and my journey began.
Well, that is absolutely brilliant. And we will look, we guys, I don't think any of us would mind coming and doing another our Thursday, your Wednesday. Maybe we could sneak you in once a month.
Woo! No, maybe
Once
not
every
once
2
a month,
months?
but maybe once every 2 months.
Yeah.
I could probably.
I mean, it's taken me 12 months to get to now.
I know. But, we're Monday night and Tuesday night are both socked away. I'm just, Wednesday night is usually my decompression night. But, for you folks, I could make it happen once in a while, for sure.
Yeah, well, that would be awesome because we all absolutely adore you and do our best to get on your calls. And if not, we watch the replays. Speaking of replays, anyone can watch this. You're welcome to share it once I get it up, whenever my internet lets me put it up today. But trouble of living in the bush. So anyway, with no further ado, we will close this out, and I will, as I say here in Bronnie's World, to stay safe, stay informed, be empowered, but do not live in fear, my friends. And when you are looking after your gut, it'll look after your brain as well. Then you too will be powerful, beautiful, brilliant, and most definitely brave. And thank you all so much for coming. For my special guest, Dr. Joanne Conaway, thank you for that, and for helping me to celebrate my sister's life, dedicating this to her and helping, and because she would love us to be able to help others better their health as well. So God bless you all. Catch you again tomorrow here in Bronnie.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thanks
Bye.
again.